Waste, often overlooked and underestimated, is a multifaceted concept intertwined with our daily lives and the health of our planet. It encompasses everything from the food we discard to the packaging that wraps our purchases, from industrial byproducts to electronic devices at the end of their lifespan. Waste is not merely a consequence of our consumption, it's a reflection of our attitudes, behaviors, and systems. Hi, welcome to the first session of our online program on waste management. I am Tamanna Sharma. I'm an environmentalist and a climate worker, and one of my specializations happens to be waste management. For over a decade, I've spent my time understanding trash, waste management, infrastructure, and technology. Most of what I have learned is through fieldwork and hands-on practice, and I have successfully run a pan-India waste management service as part of my research and development consultancy, Earthling First. When I started, awareness was at an all-time low and so were opportunities. But today we live in a world that wants to solve this problem. And with that interest comes opportunities in many forms, whether it's a business idea or a job or an add-on skill with the power to turn garbage into gold. To know which opportunities suit your purpose best, we need to take a dig into the dumpster and find out more. In the next few sessions, we will be doing just that. In this session, we will get insights into the current situation of solid waste management in India. It's only when you know the problem that you can come up with solutions. So let's begin. Way back, waste can be traced back to ancient civilizations as human societies developed. Agriculture, engaged in trade, they generated various types of commodities and then byproducts like food scraps, leftover materials, ashes, which made up for the large chunk of what was waste back then, which was not much. However, it was during the Industrial Revolution at 18th and the 19th century that the scale and complexity of waste management challenges dramatically intensified. The rapid urbanization, industrialization, and population growth during this period led to unprecedented levels of waste production, including hazardous pollutants from factories and urban areas. In the last few decades, globalization introduced products, often single-use, to the market. Cities struggled to cope with waste, accumulated waste which was piling up and polluting waterways, creating health hazards and emitting foul odor. This prompted early efforts to address waste management through rudimentary methods such as open dumping, burning, and burying. But these irresponsible methods created a monster of a problem. These methods resulted in the rise of legacy waste, which is mixed waste, including organic, inorganic, and toxic materials. Let's look at some data. Today, more than 15,000 hectares, equivalent to 14,500 football grounds of precious land, is used for towering mountains of waste. And every year, 1,250 hectares of land is lost in India to municipal solid waste. Landfills have impacted us outside as well as inside. Unsanitary dump sites contaminate air, groundwater, surface water, and soil. Old dump sites contain carcinogens and toxins, including heavy metals such as arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, and mercury. These heavy metals are known to induce multiple organ failure damage, even in low levels of exposure. If death is not a good enough reason, then maybe the financial part might scare some. Landfills cause huge financial losses. For example, estimates say that the external cost of Bhandwari dump site in Gurgaon, Haryana comes to around 146.46 crores. Right there are three landfills, giant landfills in New Delhi NCR and Palswa, Ghazipur and Okhla, and they've collectively caused nearly 450 crores in damage to the environment over the years. So what are we to do with such landfills. There are two approaches for dump site remediation. One is biocapping and one is biomining. Of the 3,184 dump sites as per CPCB, only 234 are reclaimed and only 8 have been converted to scientific landfills, which is not a good sign at all. We need to do much more. While these solutions are not perfect, one of the biggest measures is to not let the waste piles grow any further. After all, is this the legacy that we want to leave behind? I'm sure no. So to make the case strong, you need to understand in detail how waste negatively impacts us. When it comes to health, it's by spreading disease. For biodiversity, it's by polluting habitats and contributing to climate change through greenhouse gas emissions from generation to incineration. Waste causes various health issues, including respiratory problems from burning waste, infections from waste, bad improper disposal, and chronic diseases from exposure to toxic substances. Contaminated water sources can lead to gastrointestinal illnesses, while the pests that are attracted to waste cause diseases like malaria and dengue fever. Now, while it's quite difficult to manage leachate coming out of toxic materials, something which was absolutely avoidable is disrupting the very fabric of our existence. This micro-contamination has crossed all limits imaginable, and it is with plastics. The red flag of our consumptive lifestyle, they've reached the limits of Earth, from the Mariana Trench to the tip of Mount Everest. These tiny particles of plastic have seeped into clouds and have found buried in archaeological remains which were considered pristine, but no more. They have also challenged our idea of bodily inviolability to infiltrating every organ. What might have been considered the purest part of being a human life, placenta, babies, breast milk, now shockingly contain microplastics found in skin tissue and blood. So it comes as very little surprise that human testicles now have them too, according to the most recent research finding. Let's get to biodiversity. Waste affects biodiversity by polluting natural habitats and leading to loss of species. Plastic waste in ocean harms marine life through ingestion and entanglement. Toxic chemicals can contaminate soil and water, and they affect plants and animals equally. Landfills destroy habitats, and invasive species that are attracted to waste can outcompete native species, which is really bad for the ecosystem, the local ecosystem. What happens is that loss of species threatens human survival by disrupting the vital ecosystem services like pollination, clean water, depleting medical resources, damaging economies, worsening climate change, and eroding cultural heritage. This biodiversity crisis endangers our health, food security, and way of life. So this is what's happening right now. What are the modern interventions then? What did we do about it? As the detrimental effects of unchecked waste became more apparent, particularly in densely populated urban centers, governments and communities began to implement more systematic approaches to waste management. This marked the emergence of what you see right now, the modern waste management practices, including the establishment of public sanitation systems, recycling initiatives, and regulations aimed at controlling pollution and safeguarding public health. Since then, the recognition of waste as a pressing environmental, social, and economic issue has continued to evolve, spurred by growing concerns about resource depletion, pollution, and climate change. Today, waste management is a global challenge that requires coordinated efforts across sectors and disciplines. The agenda is to promote sustainable consumption, minimize waste generation, and maximize resource recovery. This coordination happens between generators, producers, consumers, governance authorities, and businesses. We are all part of this chain somehow, somewhere, and that is where you can use the knowledge from this module to truly make a difference. There are opportunities at every step which can correct the trajectory. Listen carefully to each and every pointer. You never know where you might find your perfect fit. So let's dig deeper. To be able to ascertain how you and I, in our individual capacity as well as a career choice, can help the situation get better, we have to dig into the scale of the problem. So according to a report, India generates over 62 million tons of waste in 1 year. Only 43 million tons of that waste is collected. Only 12 million tons is treated before disposal, and the remaining 31 million tons is simply discarded in waste yards. While I believe these numbers don't really tell us the whole story, littering can make estimations quite difficult. What these numbers give us is an overall pain point which can be used to create targets for change makers like yourself. On one hand, scenarios projected to intensify, with waste generation expected to soar to 165 million tons by 2030, which is right around the corner. On the other hand, the market for solid waste management in India is expected to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 7.5% during the forecast period of 2021-2026 right now. This growth is driven by factors such as rising awareness of waste management, of course, growing investments in waste management infrastructure. And that in turn means that a lot of new opportunities for careers and innovations will happen in this sector. Even with projected growth in both waste generation and the market for solid waste, the game entirely depends on the management of it. India right now is ranked 4th in the mismanaged waste index, a staggering 98.55% of waste being improperly handled. And really concerning is India's performance in managing plastic waste. What does this mean? It means that we as Indians have to work together and fix it. There is no other way around it. We can no longer afford to ignore it, and there is no way. It's right here, right now that we begin, even if little by little. You now know the problem, you know the scale of it, you know the future growth projection of both the problem and the solution market. You now also know that the scope for making a career out of this sector is not only possible, but it's only going to expand. And like I said before, no matter what you do, waste is always going to accompany your work and profession in some form or the other. So let's understand what is the management part in waste. And this is your first crucial entryway to waste management solutions. Waste management at its core is a systematic approach to handling, processing, and disposing of waste materials in a manner that minimizes environmental impact and maximizes resource efficiency. So, number one, first, at an individual level, it begins with recognizing and categorizing materials that are discarded, with the ultimate goal of reducing the amount of waste generated. This involves identifying materials that can be repurposed or recycled, those that can be composted and returned to earth as organic matter, those suitable for upcycling into new products, and those that pose hazard and require special handling. The process of waste management extends beyond individual actions to encompass a broader system involving communities, municipalities, and various stakeholders. It operates through a series of interconnected stages, starting from primary segregation of waste at its source. This initial sorting helps streamline subsequent collection and transportation processes, ensuring that materials are efficiently routed to appropriate facilities for further processing. Number 2, collection and transportation. Collection and transportation represent a pivotal stage in waste management, requiring coordinated efforts to gather and transport waste materials to designated processing and recycling centers. So number 3, once at these facilities, waste undergoes additional segregation and processing to extract the recyclable materials, compost the organic matter, and manage the hazardous substance. Recycling plays a crucial role in waste management, offering a means to recover valuable resources from discarded materials, and reduce our reliance on finite natural resources. Through recycling initiatives, materials like paper, plastic, glass, metal are diverted from landfills and reintegrated into the production cycle, which is conserving energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is absolutely important today. Number 4, disposal of waste that cannot be recycled or repurposed. It necessitates careful consideration of environmental impact and public health concern. Scientifically engineered storage sites designed to contain hazardous materials and prevent contamination of soil and water sources, they provide a crucial final destination for non-recyclable waste. Overall, effective waste management requires collaboration, synchronization across all levels of society, from individual action to community-wide initiatives and government policies. While the ideal practice of waste management strives for efficiency and sustainability, several common gaps and challenges often hinder its effective implementations. Let's understand what are these crucial gaps. For example, on the most basic ground level, you will find lack of awareness and education. Many individuals may not fully understand the importance of proper waste management practices, or may be unaware of how to segregate waste effectively. This lack of awareness is the most obvious reason for improper disposal habits and contamination of recyclable materials. Lack of awareness is also one of the big reasons why well-educated public officers look at dump sites and landfills as their final answer till date. In recent years, a lot of work has been done to make public aware. I am myself a huge believer that it's not behavior, but situations and lack of cohesive tools that promote bad waste management practices. In fact, one of my recent successful 3-year-long experiment involved social psychology principles and systems thinking to change response. You will find that case study and many more in your reading materials, so make sure to read them and save them for future references. When I say behavior is not a problem, situation is, I mean to divert your attention to the second common gap that hinders good waste management practices. It's insufficient and inadequate infrastructure. Lack of waste collection, transportation systems, or lack of recycling facilities. That's what impedes proper handling and processing of waste materials. Rural areas and developing regions often face greater challenges in accessing these infrastructures. And in my experience in running a Pan-India Waste Management Service, we found that no standard infrastructure exists in the country, while the waste generated is standard. Furthermore, over the years, my analysis tells me that lack of segregation of waste at source not only increases transport requirement as it takes up more space, it also adds to legacy waste. And guess what? Wasting of waste. Meaning a clean cardboard can go back for recycling, but something that has oil on it, food on it, cannot. It's waste being wasted further. How about that? So let's go to another gap. Most government budgets for waste management just end up on transport. So we can't really expect them, or can we, to build further infrastructure for scientific recovery and disposal. Well, one simple answer to this problem is segregation of waste at source and managing organic waste right there. That solves more than one problem in one go. If we can manage that, we can reduce these gaps and can focus on other challenges. Another one, big one, is complex supply chains and global trade. Globalized supply chains and trade networks can complicate the waste management efforts by increasing the volume of imported waste materials. As of the information provided from the year 2022, India imports various types of waste materials, including plastic, scrap, electronic waste, and even hazardous waste. Here are some specific details. For plastic waste, India has imported approximately 80,000 metric tons of plastic waste in 2022. The United States was the largest source of India's plastic imports, accounting for roughly 80% of the total volume. Electronic waste, India imports significant quantities of electronic waste, with 39.8 thousand metric tons alone coming from the United Arab Emirates. There's also records of hazardous waste being imported into India, with specific volumes by state available in statistics, although the exact total volume for 2022 is not known. You might be wondering, why do we need to import waste when we have so much of our own? Well, one is that segregated waste has a high chance of clean recovery, and the quality of waste from many countries is better, which works very well for businesses in recycling. The economic value chain created through these imports serves the businesses very well. Now, number 2, why are we importing hazardous waste? Again, getting paid in an outsourcing job is preferred than managing mixed and mismanaged waste right at home. It comes down to economics. This can change, if we can achieve high standards of scientific segregation right at source, which has now become a priority of several NGOs, NPOs, social enterprises in recent years, which has also led to reduction in imported waste. Lastly, but definitely not the least, an absolutely important consideration to make. Among all the technical challenges, there lies a serious case of environmental justice and equity. Vulnerable communities, including low-income neighborhoods and marginalized populations, often bear a disproportionate burden of environmental pollution and inadequate waste management services. Addressing issues of environmental justice and equity is essential for ensuring fair and equitable access to waste management resources and services. When you solve one of these gaps, you directly or indirectly not only impact the environment in a good way, but also promote justice for communities who suffer from disproportionate impact created by privileged consumption. When you solve one of these gaps, even a little, it has a cascading impact on much more. Now, before we get into technical waste material nitty-gritties from the next session onwards, one very important tool you should know right now, which will help you in the field, something that I have been using quite well for years, is your constitutional rights, duties, and government policies. Why no policies at all? Policies are your tools for support through the government and the courts. They will help you build a case, promote activities and solutions, build clientele, and overall align your professional motivations and career aspirations to that of the country. Some of these policies that you should know about are Solid Waste Management Rules 2016. My favorite. These rules mandate the segregation, storage, transportation, and disposal of solid waste in environmentally sound manners. Example, if you live in a residential society, these rules can help you to ensure that the society segregates waste at source with different categories: organic, recyclable, hazardous, and inert waste, using color-coded bins. Societies must collaborate with authorized waste collectors for proper waste disposal. One of the rules state that if there is a gathering of more than 100 people, there has to be waste management compulsorily. This rule has helped me and my company and many others in getting bulk generators of waste to mandatorily take care of this much of ignored subject. Other rules and policies to read: Hazardous and Other Waste Management and Trans-Boundary Movement Rules 2016, amended in 2024. This policy deals with generation, storage, disposal, and cross-border movement of hazardous waste. For example, an individual working in an industry that generates hazardous waste, like batteries, chemicals, etc., can demand the establishment of safe collection centers for hazardous waste and proper documentation and procedures for its safe disposal as per these rules. These rules are also extremely helpful when it comes to setting up e-waste initiatives. Under these rules also comes Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR. EPR requires producers to be responsible for the entire life cycle of their product, particularly post-consumption stage. We learn about life cycle in the later sessions. So here, for example, you can demand the manufacturers or the electronic batteries or packaged goods manufacturer to set up or finance collection and recycling of their own product once you're done using them. Companies must now obtain EPR certificates which can be traded on EPR platforms. EPR not only holds producers responsible, but it also presents us with an opportunity to add services to the economic value chain. You should also brush up on plastic waste management rules. Now, before I tell you a little about them, I want to mention that plastic is not the bad guy. It's the management of it that has created such a chaos in the world that now it's found in the most remote corners. So let's understand how India plans to manage this problem. These rules focus on reducing plastic waste through principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle. They put the onus on producers, importers, and brand owners to manage the waste. For example, as a consumer, these rules empower you to question and demand local supermarkets and businesses to take back plastic packaging and provide alternatives, which is in line with the concept of extended producer responsibility. Recent amendments in Plastic Waste Management Rules 2024 also mention biodegradable plastics. The rules now clearly define biodegradable plastics as materials that degrade biologically without leaving microplastics. Annual reporting from local bodies and panchayats have given additional responsibilities for assessment of plastic waste management. Then, very important, there's also the e-waste management rules. Such an ease of technology where you lose one headphones and you pick up another one in an hour or less. Where does it all go? E-waste consists of precious materials, natural materials that in today's world just get lost in the landfill and turn rather toxic. If we want to keep advancing technologically and grow, we need to also respect the materials that make it possible for us to use those phones and computers and technology in general. These rules and policies accompany schemes and initiatives that change every now and then, and keeping a check on them and their development gives you an added advantage, and it also helps you understand what this domain would look like in the future. As an aware citizen or as a professional, keeping a tab on changes in policies and amendments helps you stay in alignment and in power. In the next session, we will get into the technical details of waste management materials and their corresponding markets. Now, this section is quite important because it will help you build a sound foundation for a career in waste management. So that was it for the first session of our waste management module. I will see you in the next session with slightly more technical details, which will absolutely make a lot of difference.